Hello, fellow historians and people alike. My name is Roy McCabe, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that sits right at the intersection of politics, identity, and history. Japan's post-war democracy and how it has been shaped by one political powerhouse. This political powerhouse, otherwise known as the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, or the LDP. The title of my presentation is The Party That Wouldn't Fall: The LDP's Memory, Politics, and Japan's Constitutional Debate. So, with that being said, let's begin. I'd like to start by giving you a brief description of what Japan's post-war landscape looked like. So let's start by going back to the year 1947. In 1947, after World War II, Japan was completely restructured under Allied occupation. So the results of this was a brand new constitution that, among many things, included a unique clause. This very unique clause is known as Article 9. It states in Article 9 that Japan will forever renounce war and won't maintain military forces. So it limits them to having zero military to protect themselves or to wage any wars on other nations. This clause laid the foundation for Japan's modern democracy, but at the same time, a new political force was beginning to emerge in Japan. This political force is known as the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, which would go on to dominate Japanese politics for decades. Hear me when I say this, decades. And it is still in power today, which in my opinion is pretty remarkable, especially in a democratic system. You don't see that very often. With that being said, let's go on to discuss the rise of the LDP. So the question is, how did the LDP become the dominant party in Japan? Well, the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, was formed in 1955 and quickly built strong ties with the US during the Cold War. The LDP pushed for a pro-business agenda and created what some scholars called policy cartels. So to break this down, policy cartels are basically networks between bureaucrats and businesses, and the party itself uses them to stay in power. Even during political scandals or when public opinion seemed to dip, the LDP often bounced back stronger than ever. A Nikkei Asia article that was put forward in 2021 pointed out that many young voters still prefer the LDP. Not necessarily because they are inspired by it, but the reason for that being is because it is seen as a stable and as predictable. That truly does say a lot about a certain political culture. Moving on, let's discuss Article 9 and the debate over pacifism. On paper, it is stated that Japan can't have a military, hold or have military forces, but in reality, Japan has a well-equipped self-defense force. The question is, how is this possible? Well, because over time, governments, especially governments such as the one that is formed under the LDP, have reinterpreted the clause that stated they were not allowed to have a military. By doing so, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in particular, tried to push constitutional changes so that Japan could engage in collective self-defense. In other words, they can have and hold their own military, but on a small scale. That means helping allies in military conflicts. But this move triggered mass protests across Japan. Many people in the nation saw it as a threat to Japan's pacifist identity, which is honestly, it raised a big question. The question is, by changing Article 9, does it mean that Japan stops being the peaceful nation that it has tried to be for so many decades? Moving on, let's discuss memory politics and the shadow of war. This brings us to something deeper. How does Japan remember its wartime past? This is a very interesting question that has marveled many historians. The LDP, Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, has often downplayed or softened Japan's wartime actions, especially when it is put forward in textbooks that are taught throughout the school systems and in official statements. By doing so, this has created a lot of tension with countries, such as neighboring nations like South Korea and China, where memories of the atrocities that were committed by the Japanese invaders during their occupations of these certain nations are still very raw and sensitive. So by putting forward misinformation or not fully covering the atrocities that were committed during that time, trying to forget them, it does affect these other nations and upset them. A key example is Abe's 2013 visit to the Yakusuni Shrine. So the Yakusuni Shrine is where Class A war criminals are enshrined and shown off. That visit wasn't just symbolic for Abe, but it really strained diplomatic relations. As historian Alexis Dundin puts it, acts such as these of historical revision aren't just about the past, they are shaping Japan's future, and not in a good way. The Constitution as identity. So the question is, what does the Constitution really mean to Japan? Well, it is more than just a law. Technically, it is like a mirror reflecting how the country tends to see itself. Some, if not many people, see it as a symbol of peace and rebirth, whereas others feel it is outdated and was imposed by the US. Scholar Kenneth Pyle puts it well. He said that the Constitution is really a proxy for Japan's identity crisis. Should Japan be a pacifist nation and a normal country with a strong military? These are huge questions that the LDP has to balance as it tries to revise the Constitution. So, in conclusion, let me wrap this up by saying the LDP has played a major role in shaping Japan's post-war story. It's not just about holding political power, more so it is about navigating deep questions of history, identity, and memory. Whether it is in Article 9 or the way the country remembers its past, these debates show that the Constitution is not just a legal document. It is a living symbol of who Japan is and who Japan wants to become. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Below, I have a series of sources, academic sources, that I used for this presentation. These include references and quotes or sayings from scholars like Richard Samuels, Sheila Smith, Alexis Dundin, Jennifer Lind, and Kenneth Pyle, as well as government and news sources like Nikkei Asia and Japan's official constitutional website. If you wish, you can pause here and you can go to some of my sources and dive in deep firsthand into the information that is provided. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope to see you again soon.